I am Tiffany Bacon here with WURD. Thank you all so much for coming out. We love doing things like this. And for Black Music Month, we have to celebrate our music in all of its many facets and all of its glory. And we're going to have a conversation about the global impact of African, Caribbean, and African-American music. This evening, we call it Afro Express. For those who are old heads in the music scene, it's a pun on the Trans-Euro Express song from the late 70s, early 80s, but it's also referencing just the impact that we have had around the globe and how we influence each other. And so many genres were born from our music. So that is what the conversation is about this evening. I want to introduce you, and they can give you a little bit more about who they are, but our panel is very esteemed and they know their stuff. First and foremost, please put your hands together. To my immediate left, she is the host of The Source on WURD early in the morning, so we're glad that she is here with us right now. Put your hands together for Andrea Lawful-Sanders. Immediately to her left, we have an esteemed professor who is a musicologist, who is a composer, musician, highly decorated, and knows a little two things about music. Put your hands together for Dr. Guthrie Ramsey. Next to Dr. Ramsey, we have the longstanding host of Caribbean Connection at WURD, who's had a long history of being a host in radio and promoting and supporting Caribbean music, specifically reggae, ska, soca, and the like. Please put your hands together for Lloyd Cummings. Next to him, we have two brothers who have a new show at WURD where they are really diving into Afrobeat, world rhythms. They have their own shows on WURD, but they come together to create this new vibe called Afro Unity Beats. Please put your hands together for David Barnes and Brother Shamari. Woo! So this is what we're working with in terms of the panel. I first want to start with each of you, your take as music lovers, because you all are. Talk about your take on the historical influence of African music throughout the Caribbean, South America, and North America. I'll start with Andrea.
So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for World Black Music Month on WURD. You know, I love this station. I love everything about all of you, and I learn so much from each and every one of you at 5 o'clock each morning. Now, listen, I don't know too much about, 5 o'clock, yep. Then I wake up at 3 o'clock to do my research in the morning, and by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I am done. But you see where I am at 7 o'clock tonight, though? So it just goes to show how much we love you and what you bring to the table for us on WURD Radio. I was born and raised in Jamaica. And so there was so much that I did not know about African or African-American music, but what I do know is reggae, right? So I was born in 1968, and my first intro into reggae music was ska. Ska, 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 da, 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 da. Lord Jamaican ska, right? And so my father would play it every Sunday from 3 in the afternoon until we went to bed. And I would learn all the genres of the music. And so I began to ask him, what's happening here? So this is a way we learned how to take care of ourselves and to feel good about ourselves after struggling. My first intro into reggae music was Bob Marley. His son, his oldest son, and I went to school together. And we had a lot of conversations. You know, we would talk about reggae music, you know, after school, and we would talk about Bob Marley and Peter Tosh, and then I learned about Buju Banton, right? I'm a living while I'm living, to the Father I will pray. Only Him know how we get through every day. With all the hike in the price, how my leg we have to pay. while our leaders play. All I see, people are ripping around all the grind. Thief never love to see thief with long back. No love for the people who are suffer real bad. Another toast to the poor man, God help his soul. What is to stop the youth from get out of control? All up our education, but no on a payroll. They close on your back of countless eyeballs. Could go on and on, the fool has never been told. And so there we go, right? We learn. Right? We learned about the suffering of the people through the music. And we also learned growing up in Jamaica that the more you rise, the more humble you should become. That hard work is something that we should never, ever take for granted. So when I open up the microphone every morning at 5 o'clock, I think about you. I think about how your day may have been. I think about how I want your day to be. And although we can't play music because of our Facebook platform, believe me, there are days when I break out into song, depending on what's going on. So that is how I feel about the music. So thank you all so much. I know I didn't mean to sing y'all, but I love to sing. So
you apologizing.
Oh, honey, I can't wait to hear from you.
Yes, Dr. Ramsey.
For real. Keep that regular.
That's all right, Dr. Ramsey. That's all right.
Well, I think the question was, what was the historical significance of this music, the global significance of the music? And I think it was just demonstrated just now how the music you heard from your father's record collection became a touchstone for you that was so strong and so relevant that you remember the words of the songs, that when you probably put those songs on today, they send you right back from Philadelphia all the way back to Jamaica. And so that's one of the things that our music does, is that it connects us to our past, it grounds us in our present, and it gives us a window into the future. I always say that our music is how we time travel. That if you hear one song that references a gesture or a lyric or a beat from your past, it will take you there. Not only will it take you there, but you'll smell what you smelled at that time. If you were being punished, you remember how that slap fell up against your head. It's a thing that we do as humans that connects us. One thing I think is important to begin with is to think about how traveling African music was, in many ways, the first powerful global music. We always say global music, to refer to a specific genre in the music industry. But if we think about it historically, Black music traveled from Africa throughout the Caribbean, South America, North America. A Philadelphian, Frank Johnson, was the first Black musician to take it back to Europe in 1833. He was a Philadelphian. You can't talk about Black music in America without understanding the significance of Philadelphia in that story. I think freedom came in 1783, was probably the first free Black people in the freed, and the music that was made became a paradigm for everything that followed. And it's still going strong.
I love it. I want to dive into that if we have time a little bit more, but I definitely want to hear from Lloyd. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. After those two brilliant people, what am I going to say?
Well, you got the thing.
That's it. Can't say, but I leave the same to the reggae artist. Oh, it's a real pleasure to be here with my colleagues and my co-workers. And as you well know, I'm from Jamaica. I do the Caribbean rhythms there on Saturday nights. And, music has been ingrained into me as it was in Andrea. I'm from the eastern part of Jamaica, where the drum and the bass is prominent. They have kumina. the beating of the drums from the motherland. And it's been ingrained into my brain ever since I was young. I used to sit by and listen to the beating of the drums. I got into the music down in Jamaica when I used to listen to rhythm and blues, actually, in my time. But reggae came along in the 60s, and by the 60s, I was living in London. And although we got the music coming up through Chris Blackwell, bringing up the... used to call it blue beat, the records to England. And so, you know, music has always been following me around, and I follow it around, and it's been ingrained into me. I've been at WURD Radio for 20 years, been in radio in Philadelphia for more than 40 years. I started working at DAS, and I worked with Cody there, worked with Cody Anderson at WHAT, and went to Temple University, did a big job at the Temple. Saturday morning, the WRTI, and then I came to WURD, and I've been there for as long as WURD has existed, which is a real joy, because I get to do some really, really good work. All the folks who listen, I appreciate you. You know, we say reggae music is the soundtrack for equal rights and justice. Yes. With the ability to heal and uplift.
Right
now, you turn on your television these days and you hear Mr. Marley, who I knew very well, interviewed him here in Philadelphia twice, emceed the show in Philadelphia one time, and his music is on the radio all over the globe. we say, you know, that three little birds, and the lyrics is so powerful, because it says you must uplift yourself and be the best that you can be, because life goes on. Really, it's true. And the thing about it is all over the globe. It's not just here in America, because of the movie and because of those attributes. And you know, reggae is all over the globe, actually. Okay, you can believe that reggae is more popular in Japan than it is in the United States. Just imagine that. And so we're very proud. We're very happy. We are wonderful, as I say. The music, uplift yourself, uplift your spirits, and bring joy to your heart. Joyful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lloyd. All right, let's hear from David Barnes, representing the Afrobeat side of the conversation.
Hey, good evening, everyone out there, WURD Land. I'm David Barnes, photo man for you too. And I was really intrigued by Andrea and Lloyd saying that they were born in Jamaica. Well, actually, I was born inside of a jukebox. Honestly, my father owned a restaurant, and you know how you had the jukebox in every booth? And that's when I was a child, I would sit in my bassinet on the table, and I got the music. And then when I got a little older, we had one of those stereo systems with the record player and the bar. And I would sit there, lay there on the floor so that I could hear it in stereo. And that's how much I enjoyed music. And music has done so much for me in my life. Really learned a lot growing up listening to reggae music. I would listen to Roy Cummins all the time. He doesn't know, but I'm a longtime fan of his, from WRTI, from WHAT, from WRD, because reggae music was one of the things that was liberating to our soul, to our spirit. You know, we had African music, but we didn't get a lot of that coming up. You know, we had a lot of, in fact, I don't know if many of you remember, but on Sundays, you couldn't hardly get no music. You'd only hear Hot Lit and WPVI, you know, and then at night, you really couldn't get no music on Sunday nights. So, but music has evolved, especially black music. All music, I say, come from Africa, where we had the log drum. You know, we used to dig a drum, a tree out, make it hollow, and to make it into a log, and create sounds with it. And ever since then, we have been communicating with one another from a distance and from afar. That's both the same, a distance and afar. But we communicated with one another through the drums. And that's why in 1700s, early 1700s, they banned the drum in America because they knew that there was a form of communications between black people. So they said, well, we can't have them talking to each other because the drum was actually created a rhythm, and they thought that that rhythm would make us more rebellious. And it does. When I used to listen to, not used to, but when I listened to Brother Shamari, when this program go off the Warriors rhythm, oh my goodness, it does something to me. You know, I can't wait to study to hear the show just so I can hear that music. And that's how powerful it is. That's how powerful our music is. And that's why other people want to take our music, steal our music, and use our music and claim it as their own. They want to rewrite history. But we own music, black music, all music. And it has certainly influenced me a lot. I never even knew that I was going to do radio. I used to do photography a lot here in the city of Philadelphia for many years. And I went to the Million Man March, and I told Cody, I said, look, I got to do something more to reach more people than I do just photography. He says, well, why don't you do radio? I said, I don't know anything about radio. He said, well, I'll show you. I'll teach you. He's along with Steve Valdez and Troy Wilmore. They taught me how to be a board operator. And I'm telling you, sitting there with them earphones on, you become connected to the universe, especially when you got people that you operating the board for that are superstars. I used to be the board operator with Georgie Woods, Malifia Sante, Lucille Ijoy, all these fantastic people. And I was like in class every day, listening to them, learning from them. And I began to do radio, and I like boys for a long time. I've been doing radio for over 21 years, uninterrupted at WURD. I did a couple of years at WHAT, and I am truly enjoying this music. I was doing African music ever since I started radio back in 1999, I started playing African music. But once I got to WURD, and I had a vision that Afrobeat music was going to become the genre of today. In fact, it is becoming the strongest music of today. It's going to get even stronger. I hope I'm not talking too long.
I want to transition though, David. Okay, I want to transition. Yeah, I want to transition to Brother Shamari. You were just talking about Afrobeat. I want to slide into how that is on the rise, but I would love to hear from Shamari about like the impact of African music traveling through the Caribbean and North and South America.
Okay, I was going to say, I was playing African music, but then I began playing Afrobeat music about 8 years ago on our radio show. And then Brother Shamari came up to me recently and said, well, why don't we take this on the road? Why don't we do some Afro unity piece? You know, because we can unify people through African music. And I believe that because I believe that music is the healing force of the universe. And so when we play Afrobeat music, it unifies us as a people. And I hope that we all can come together.
I love it. Thank you, David.
All right. I think being on the end, I need a reset on the question so I know what I'm answering.
Your take on the impact of African music through the Caribbean and North and South America. We were just talking about Afrobeat and it's on the rise, but I have a specific question about that in a second. Just your take on that.
Yeah, well, for me, it's not music, it's the culture. And sometimes people say that they're the same thing, but music is a product of the culture. So, you know, I answer the question in a libation, you know, and every show I start, there's a stanza in the libation that says our songs, our steps, our beats, our chant, they travel with us and are here for us if we remember to love ourselves, right? That's intentional because that's the key to our power. That is our vibranium. That is the thing we must resurrect. And so when you begin to understand the ma'afa, when you begin to understand the significance of culture and music as a celebratory, praiseworthy, significant thing that we would use to signify accomplishment, and then it travels through the ma'afa over here, the same paradigm is there, it's just a different context. So, you know, you can have something like the songs that you sing while you're fishing. There's a fisherman song. There's a harvest song, right? You come over here, you on the chain gang. Same theory, though. It's a work song. It's just that we're working in captivity over here, so it becomes a dirge, right? You know, we have praise music, right? Y'all do know that this stuff y'all singing in the church right now, praise and worship service. Y'all know that's just basic African praise poetry. And instead of calling out your chief or calling out Kwame Nkrumah or calling out your African leader, you're calling Jesus. But it's the same paradigm. It's praise song. It's an oriki, right? And so we got to begin to understand culturally that connectivity, because every day we live and breathe, we replicate our culture. We just call it something else because a different name has been placed on it.
Thank you for that, Brother Shamari. So, yes, please. Let's stay in the pocket, right? Musical reference. Let's stay in the pocket on that for a second. First, clarification, either for Brother Shamari or Dr. Ramsey. What is the difference between Afrobeat and Afrobeat?
I'm going to let the doctor answer. So for me, the difference is which colonizer we let label our stuff. That's the only difference. Okay. So whether you want to call it soul, R&B, jazz, you know, all of that is about what the colonizers want to call it. But at the end of the day, it's African music. It's the African heartbeat. And that's like when you study at the core of the day, you're going to find whether it's a sacred song, whether it's a war song, whether it's a work song, it's an African beat, and it travels with us. It goes with us. You know, that's why I like what the brothers did with the 6/8 rhythm. That follows us, right? And then the colonizers, because they can't replicate the soul, so they got to put a brand name on it that they can then define. So to me, there should be no difference. Now, commercially, the difference is, you know, most Afro beats with an S artists say that it's merely at the core an African rhythm, and we can do anything on top of that melodically that we choose to. But at the end, what makes it Afro beats is that it has an African rhythm. And that's, so my thing is everything we do is Afro beat.
All right. Dr. Ramsey.
I don't know what the distinction would be. I don't know what the distinction would be, so I'll accept that definition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we have a lot of Afro beats on the radio right now. Lots of artists working with other artists. Chris Brown been working with various artists. WizKid has been a whiz, like, for real. The song Essence was like crazy and should have won a whole lot of awards, but that's a different story. How do you feel about the re-collaboration now with like the new energy and the new artists? How are you feeling about these new collaborations? And do you feel there's enough homage to the OGs like Fela?
Who's that for?
That's for anybody.
I think that that's the power of this moment. Like, we are really able, if we use our power, to take this moment. Every movement has a soundtrack. And if we take our power, Afro beats can become the soundtrack of Pan-Africanism. Yeah. And that's our duty to make that happen. That's why I wanted to be on this panel. That's why I wanted to be here today. That's why I want to imprint, because we're really at a crossroads where, unlike any other music before it, hip-hop had a similar power, and we missed. We let the colonizers win that one.
Did they though?
We let the colonizers win the hip-hop.
We could break that down a second, because I mean we did hip-hop last year, but
we let the colonizers win the hip-hop battle. I'm talking about as content and form and purpose.
Okay.
And I'm saying Afro beats is still early enough and global enough and rooted enough that we could actually make that the soundtrack of Pan-African liberation. And the consciousness is there, but I hear it being co-opted because other people's money is there. That's our duty not to let that happen.
If I could touch on that a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that our music is infectious, and for a long time it had not been accepted to listen to. It really wasn't accepted for us as Black people to listen to until we started people like Mongo Santa Maria and Baba Tunde Olatunji. They began to play some of their music, and we began to hear it. And as infectious as it is, we began to like it and love it. And today, a lot of, as Tiffany was mentioning, a lot of artists from America is going to Africa to collaborate with these artists because they want to get some of that soul. They want to get that original rhythm. And so Rihanna, Beyonce, Chris Brown, a lot of them go to Africa just to collaborate because I'm telling you, they have a new genre called I'm a Piano, and I'm a Piano is from South Africa. And that's a rhythm that's really taken over. You know, we play a lot of it on our show, but you may begin to hear a lot of it on other so-called other major radio stations as well. But Afrobeat music is really taking over the music industry by leaps and bounds, and I'm just glad that we are ahead of the game.
And I'd like to add to that you know, the original music was African music, all of it, drum and bass, all of it. So coming down, so it's only natural now that we should collaborate. That all the music is collaborating with Africans because it's a political move as well. Because it enlightens and it culturalizes. You get to know, understand each other from all different countries, and all the information that we are absorbing, we are sharing it. America is just not all of it. You know, there's lots and lots of countries and lots of cultures that we can use music as an avenue to expand and to enlighten.
Yeah. Do you want to do? Yeah, Dr. Ring.
One thing I'd like to bring up, it's kind of percolating underneath some of our comments, and that is sometimes with our music and with our art, we have a tendency to side politically and make the music industry or the industries in which the musicians are actually trying very hard to be a part of a bad thing. And when we talk about the success or failure of a genre, we tend to think about it in commercial terms. I'd like to speak from the perspective of being a musician, a working musician who's gigging, who's writing songs, who deeply desires as many people as I can to hear those songs. And if just a fraction of those people would be willing to pay money for those songs, I would consider that a win as a musician. And out of all the musicians I played with, I've been a professional musician since I was 17. So that's getting on about 50 years. And I've never met one musician who said, I don't want those people or that group to hear my music, to enjoy it. As my parents paid for those piano lessons, you got kids to feed, you trying to make money being a musician, and everybody is bringing the idea of cultural appropriation into it, as if it's a bad thing for the music to be shared widely and globally. Because everybody that is trying to make it as a musician really desires for you to come to their local gig. It's okay to save up for the Beyonce concert. But if you hear the band that just played, okay, hey, somebody asked them, where are you playing next?
Right.
We do farm to table with food.
Provide.
Yeah.
Okay, a lot. But our local musician, I saw Susan Laurie Parks play last night, right there on Germantown Ave.
Sure.
If I discuss the demographics of the audience, it would be another conversation. So I want to put that in the mix, that we can have theoretical ideas about music, we can have political ideas about music, but I wonder how many opinions of the musicians themselves are in the mix.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like the rest of it.
When's the last time, we worried about who's playing the blues, who's playing the jazz, who's playing the hip-hop, who's doing that?
I worry
When's the
about all the
last time
time.
you purchased the ticket? When's the last time you looked to see who was playing at World Cafe Live or Chris's Jazz Cafe or South and to come out there and make sure you're there to buy their CD? As these people are trying to make all of this great music that we say we worship and do not support.
But as a professional musician, one who does make a living there, and I understand that. I have a nephew who was rooted in jazz, but he makes his living playing all kind of lollipop music, and he loves it. But would you say there is let's take the movie One Love, which many of us just saw.
I was just about to address that in time.
It seems like there is a cost, a trade-off.
Yes.
In order for Bob Marley to stay on the path with Chris Blackwell, he lost Peter Tosh, he lost Buddy, because they weren't willing, at least the story goes, to make those concessions to the sound. One Love means something different politically, coming out of the mouth of Marcus Garvey, than what Bob Marley is singing about in order to sell 10 million records. So there is a political trade-off even in economics. Would you agree?
And
Go ahead.
there's truly, listening to Bob Marley, there's truly only one love. One love. One love. No more, it doesn't need a whole bunch.
All of real one.
For real. And Bob Marley started, a poor man, although his father was rich and all of that. But he grew up in 9 Miles and said with a poor grandfather, Omariah Malcolm, his mother's father. And so he experienced all of that growing up and then coming to Kingston and absorbing the culture in Kingston and the life in Kingston. And he still had the inspiration within him to produce what he produced. But all of that came from his upbringing and his life in Jamaica, which is a magical kind of existence.
Okay, so both and. Let's look at one of the things that I notice about us as Black people is that we see one side or the other. We don't see all sides, right? Both and. Philadelphia has some of the most creative people I have ever met in my life. And part of our issue here as a city is, to your point, Dr. Guthrie, is that we don't really fully support each other. So I'm making a commitment on WURD Radio, not just in Black Music Month, but all throughout the year, to highlight some of the local folks, right, that are consistently out here. Now that's a solution, right? So I can get on the air and I can say, so-and-so is playing at such and such, go support them. But the truth of the matter is, and we also have to see the political side. If you're a certain hue, Bob Marley became commercially successful because the music he was playing was one that embraced, everybody. Peter Tosh and the rest of them, Bush and Banton, they were talking about the suffering of the people in a way that made people rise their hackles and didn't want to really deal with it. And so they tried to push them off to the side. And Bob Marley had to leave Jamaica to go to another country for his music to become something. Because what they said to him was, you have a compound, you're living a good life, we want you to choose a political party. And the gangs were fighting so hard in Jamaica at the time, it was truly a dangerous place to live, right? For those of us who lived there. And they almost killed him. They tried to assassinate him. It took those gang leaders to come to where he was across the water to say, you're going to have to bring peace back to this country. Can you come back, right? And so we've made him a deity. But the truth of the matter, he was just a man trying to figure out how to spread the message of the joy of his music to the people. So he had some run-ins with his group, Peter Tosh and group, Yeah. I shot the sheriff, but I didn't kill the deputy. Right. With this stuff is something that we have to really think about, right? You say you're a big axe. You say if you are a big tree, then I'm a small axe, sharpened to cut you down. Well, sharp to cut you down. So you have to hear the message. We get really caught up in the beats, doom, 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 and we don't really hear the message behind it. So he's saying you're a huge political leader, right? You're the big tree, We are the small axe, sharpened to cut you down, well sharp to cut you down. We have to really hear the message and then remember why we're here and why we're doing this. It is very difficult for us as a people. But music has been politicized. Our music has been co-opted, right? And so what we have to do is turn around and support one another, right? For the artists that are here. A Beyonce ticket, y'all, was $900. I choked.
Did you go?
So after I got on the air and said, I am not a Beyonce fan, I did. And I was not spending that kind of money on no diggity damn Beyonce ticket. I did. My 26-year-old, then 26-year-old, he's 28 now, 27-year-old son called me and he says, Mom, I know you taught us how to listen to Fred Hammond and Mary Mary and Bob Marley and Buju Banton. I want you to see what we're listening to. And so I bought that $900 ticket by myself. I did. I prayed to Jesus as I was going down there. I did. And I opened my heart and my mind to fully absorb what I thought was crazy. That woman is a genius. Yes, she is. She's a genius. Her tickets are too expensive. Let me be clear. Right? When I bought my Prince tickets, and my mother thought Prince was the devil. Right? But you hear people like Janelle Monáe who follows Prince, and her song says, I am sharper than a razor, eyes made of lasers, bolder than the truth. They want me locked up in the system because I'm on a mission, blame it on my youth. Too long I've been naughty on my own, now I got to bring it on like a rolling stone. I've never been afraid to die and look a man in the eye. I come to give you what you love. Listen to the words. And so I'm concerned about like a Sexy Red. If you don't know who that is.
Okay.
But we need to talk about this. Right? I'm not going to talk about the lyrics.
I'm not talking about whether or not you're going somewhere. Right. I just want to put a pin in something.
Okay. Go ahead. Pin on.
I'm putting a pin in it. Go ahead.
Right. So we have to teach our children what real music feels like. To our babies, a Sexy Red is a good thing. The music is catchy, but the lyrics are dangerous and damaging. So we have to talk to our babies about what this means and not argue with each other about whether black music is this or whether black music is that. All of it is about our history. All of it is about how we've suffered. All of it is about our lived experiences. So it's incumbent upon us to do what we need to do to pass it on to the next generation.
Yes.
Thank you. I see you all. No, I'm not going down. I'm not going down that street right now. I'm gonna park somewhere else. Go somewhere else for a sec. Okay, one of the things that I keep hearing so far in our conversation that we just experienced also with Urban Shaman is the power of the rhythm. So, Andrea, you just mentioned, folks getting lost in the beat. Yes, but let's talk about the power of the beat. Let's talk about the power of the drum. Let's talk about the power of the rhythm section, because you can name a variety of genres. One that comes to mind right now, house music. When you put house music on, if you feel what is coming through those speakers, you end up in a trance.
Yes.
You end up dancing, and they could be saying any old thing. There was one, for my older folk in the room, if you were partying in the early 90s, which some of us was, and you went to certain clubs or schools to party, there was a particular house song that had a and it just kept going. And once you felt it, you were like, ooh, and you found yourself on the floor. You don't even know your feet were moving. You're on the floor and you're moving, right? You're moving, right, with that beat. And the song was called French Kiss. And in the middle of the song was some moaning. Somebody had a good time on the record, and the beat slowed down. And without instruction, you also slowed down. And if you were dancing with somebody cute, there was a song later on in the 2000s about feeling nature's rising and such, but these were things that happened organically on the floor. You were no longer in control at that moment.
Right.
You were following the beat. let's just talk about, before we get into lyrics and sexy anything, let's just talk about the power of the beat, because that is beyond influential. And I don't know that we spend enough time talking about African rhythms and how they, if you are connected at all, they speak to you in ways where you just find yourself moving, even if you're in a bad mood, no mood at all. Brother Samari, I see you looking.
I mean, I think you're going to have to tell us, some water, or else we go.
No, I mean, I want to just jump on in, because
my name. That's why I said at the beginning.
The power of the beat is so important. I mentioned Kumina when I was growing up in Jamaica. Kumina is drum and bass and the rumba box. And they would come into a community and they would perform. And while they're performing, the people standing around would get in a trance, like they lose their mind, going to another world. And you tell them the next day that what they did, they can't believe they did what they did. Shows you the power of the music and the power of the beat. So you touch on a very, very important. So, because I have witnessed it.
And again, that's what I said. Libation is sacred. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Because when people do that, they're trying to make it palatable. They're trying to take the core. They're trying to take the seed. They're trying to take the soul and the heart from it so that more people can consume it. It's the same thing I said about music, though, right? I mean, some of us grew up in the church. You know that every time if you see people shouting or quote unquote being possessed, you know that there was a chord structure that was played that bore in Jesus, the Holy Ghost. Dr. Guy probably could tell you what it is, because they study it. It's a science. It's a science to the sacred, right? So you're going to usher in, whether you drumming, you usher in spirit. And you watch people go into trance-like state. So this thing ain't to be played with, which is why we have to be political and on point about it. Because the power of it, when these crazy people that's all in going to jail now that y'all talk about, when R. Kelly tells you he's the Pied Piper of R&B, you got to understand what that means. Number one, you got to understand the story of the Pied Piper. Because the Pied Piper of Hamelin used his flute to lead the rats off of the cliff. But when he didn't get his money, again, when money becomes a thing, he went back and let the children off the cliff. Because that's the power of the beat. One of my favorite plays is Bringing the Noise, Bringing the Funk with Savion Glover. It's all about using his feet to trace the path of the beat once it was lost as a result of the Ma'afa, the slave ship. This thing is a sacred science, and we let people who don't mean us well play with our sacral chakras and our root chakras through the sacral science. And that's why you ground it on the floor. No offense, Tiffany, but that's what happens. There's a science to this thing. And we can't let everybody play without, because they're playing with spirit. They're playing with energy. They're playing with emotions when we let other people play with this thing.
Well, Tiffany, you mentioned the house music. Well, actually, that's what amapiano is. House music with African rhythm and a log drum, and that's what makes it so popular, because they get into that trance with the amapiano.
Yes. Dr. Ramsey.
I love conversations where we talk about the separating out the truth claim of lyrics and the sound organization of what people are experiencing. Just as a musician, I can listen to a song 20 times and really enjoy the song, and maybe about the 40th time around, I'll get around to what they're actually singing about. Because for me, a song, say if I hear it on the radio, it's really about how they separated the frequencies of the lead vocalists and the background singers, where they mixed the bass, the kick drum, what is the snare pattern, what are the harmonies. And by the time I get through all of that, I'm like, now, what is this song about? And by the way, I hear sometimes these artists that we might criticize, the music that we are hearing or most exposed to is what the industry allows us to hear. Because I was talking to a friend who is a hip hop head who went to see Sexy Red, and they said she got bars. That she's just not. It's just not what you hear on the radio sometimes. But people have a more vast background than the commercial industry will allow us to hear. And you're absolutely right. There are people who will change their music in order to be successful. Meaning you might want to be a straight ahead jazz player, but if you can make some smooth jazz and make some bread,
Right.
you're gonna make some smooth jazz and play the other stuff on the side. And I personally don't have any problems with that.
Okay. So when you hear Brother Shamari talk about the vibration of the music and how sacred it is and how it goes into our chakras, when you got bars that have lyrics that are going into our chakras that encourage and invite things, and then we sit on the air and we talk about what's happening to our children, if we forget how sacred the music is to us, right? Then that stuff is invited in. It is a spirit. That stuff is invited in, and we wonder why these things are happening. I have a 32-year-old son that listens to something. I get into his car. He's going to pick up his children. This is what I hear. Da, 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 da. What the hell are you listening to, son? I went to the store and I saw this thing. And right, like this rumble thing. And I'm like, but you weren't raised on this, son. He says, Mom, you just don't understand. My 28-year-old son, he'll listen to the things that I listen to, but he listens to his stuff too. So he'll introduce me. The first time I heard Nicki Minaj, I almost fell out my seat. So you just literally have to. I don't ever shut my ears to what my children are trying to tell me, but I also listen, educate, learn, listen, educate, learn, right? You all went to the house parties. Now, I didn't know the Afrobeats as much as you do, but I bet you all know this. Roll back the rug, everybody. Come on. Move all the tables and chairs.
We're about to do that. I'm up in here.
We're gonna have us a good time tonight. Every time that we meet, we skip and we dip to the beat, yeah. What in the world could be better than getting together? Y'all old enough to know this song? The last time we did a party, it ended when the sun came up. That's why your mama told you that you shouldn't go out.
Staying out.
Right? So the music, the lyrics matter. They absolutely matter, even as we're dancing and gyrating to the music. Now, Jamaicans are real nasty when they're on the dance floor. Am I lying, Lloyd Cummins?
No, absolutely not.
Y'all not lying. And that's why I go to those parties.
So it matters. It literally becomes spiritual, and it matters.
So let me ask this. Since we're here, I don't like the term playing devil's advocate. I want to be no advocate to that.
Okay.
What I am saying is there not room for multi-layered musical experiences, even if you're listening to something that doesn't make really any sense, but it feels good? I.e., Das Effects. Bum stickity, bum. That's how it starts. What are we talking about? It don't matter, but I love the song.
Yeah.
It's a groove. Depending on how you were matriculated into music, how you were raised in it, will kind of pepper how you receive new things. So there's an age-old issue. Older folks not liking younger folks' music. It doesn't matter what generation you're talking about. Our parents didn't like hip-hop until they found a rapper that they liked.
That's right.
Their parents didn't like R&B. They wanted you to stay in gospel or jazz or what have you. And their parents didn't like gospel and jazz was dirty and race music. Like, it doesn't matter. You keep going back and back and back. There was always a generational gap when we're talking about new sounds. So where is there space, even in this discussion, and as us grown folks, to say there's a new sound I might not get, but I don't necessarily, I'm not doing it across the board here.
Right.
I don't necessarily need to demonize it because I don't understand it.
Intention and impact.
Explain.
That's where the rubber meets the road, right? We're at a restaurant. Just because you like it don't mean it's good for you. And as adults, we need to have the discipline to know that, yeah, I might like the hell out of that sugar, but it's going to kill me. So that's where the music words have that power, right? Because we just talked about there's an intention behind it. There's an intention in the industry to weaponize musical forms.
So, okay, so we do know that the industry, quote, end quote, the industry is that thing that pushes out the sounds to us to consume.
Right.
Not that there aren't other sounds in the mix.
Right.
They just might not have the team behind them to push them out
Right.
to make them popular. So even in that space, so for example, in the early 90s, when hip hop was really becoming America's popular music, there were a lot of older folks that had issue even with the hip hop back then that we look back on so fondly now. Is there a space, like would we say that there was bad intention in all of hip hop? There's the generalization that hip hop is bad without considering a Common, a Most, Yassine Bey, all of these other artists that have other things to say, Kendrick Lamar, other people who have other things to say. There's a generalization on a genre, which I think is equally as damaging.
But the challenge is once it becomes a genre, it is an industry. And it's the industry that makes it problematic. And that's like, there's a difference between being a creative and what gets created. And the difference is that media industry that's in the middle of that process. And that's where the intention and the impact becomes problematic. And that's where we got to really begin. It's nothing wrong with a sensual song, but when you have an industry that's manipulating the sensuality of children, that's problematic. And when you know that there's an intention and an impact there, we must, as adults, do something about that. Now, what you listen to when you're in the room with your boo, that's between you and your boo. But that's very different than knowing that there are record industries and music industries and radio stations who are programming, that's why it's called musical programming, the mindset of a people. Like we can't conflate those two things and make it about the music. The musical form, once it has a name, has already been commodified. That's where we started about what's Afrobeats. We already established that as music. But the minute that there's a genre attached to it, there's also an intention. And that intention comes with an impact, and that's where the problem is.
I think it's all about social engineering. I think the society is engineering, wanting to sedate us with the type of music that the music industry puts out. But we do have alternative music. We have alternative music in Afro Unity Piece. We have alternative music in reggae. We don't have to be enslaved to the music that they're trying to stuff down our throat. And that's why we have choice.
It's a very powerful thing, music and sound. And I touch on what Brother Shamari said, programming. If you listen to you may hear a song for the first time and you don't like it. But if you listen to it over and over again, you will find yourself singing it.
Don't worry.
And hating it while you're singing it sometimes.
That joint snuck up on me. I love that song. I used to hate this song.
But let's listen to this part of it, though. There's a genre of music called drill music.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time talking to teenagers in Philadelphia and beyond. And what they said to us was, this music is created so that we can go kill people and then write about it in drill music. And the more heinous the killing, the better the drill music is and how much likes and shares that you get. And so to your point, when we're talking about, can we just open our minds? Our children are being programmed with some of this music that really is detrimental, right? Just written in the news the other day, a 17-year-old turned in 4 gang members, and it was the drill music. These children are killing for street cred, not for money, for credibility, y'all. So what's missing in our families that we have to say, come on, listen, I don't particularly care for the music that my children like, but my mother didn't like Prince. She thought he was the devil. And when Prince died, she said, the devil died. You all right?
That's a good mother line right there.
Yeah, my mama was not playing. She's like, so I understand that, right? And there's some things that Prince sang that was like Little Red Corvette, that, you know, a little questionable, okay, that we liked, right? But he drill music is incredibly
I want to be the
deep.
only one you come for. Yeah.
And so we have to think these things through. And as we become adults, we laugh and we say, oh my God, but we were really listening to that? Because we don't know
All the jockeys that were there
to our body. So I have to respectfully agree to disagree that not all music is open and fair for us, because our children are really finding themselves in bad spaces and being locked up because they're told drill music, for example, is what they should do.
Okay, I'm not going to disagree that we love our children and we want the best for them and we want to supervise what God has monitored, what God has gifted us with. But what do you do when the music is already in the world?
Child.
Okay, so we're dealing with a situation that we're not going to talk it away. We're actually here with WURD, which is part of the industry that we are critiquing.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what I've done. I've raised a musician who majored in music at Spelman. I'm half raising a granddaughter who's 14-year-old cellist, who I don't tell her what not to listen to, but I expose her to everything I would love for her to hear. I take her to concerts with me. Okay, you can put enough in a child where whatever room is left that they can figure out, you know, what their peers are doing and what's on the radio. Okay, is that how they're consuming the music these days anyway? Or is it with specialized playlists that are paid? So one of the things we have to do is, and I mean, I'm with you, you know what I mean, is that we have to face it realistically, that old paradigm of an industry, the music industry as we know it, is so fractured and fragmented. It doesn't resemble anything that it did 10 years ago.
Right.
You have Bandcamp, Spotify, you have so many ways. It's just so, it's so independent now that the main thing we can't do is talk like it's the early 90s, where the industry has all of that control. There are so many independent ways to supervise and get music to your children. Who's taking their kid to the settlement school where you could get violin lessons for $10?
Right.
Yes, they go on scholarship. I'm just saying that there are so many ways that if we're really concerned, and I'm not talking about the panel, I'm just saying in general,
Right.
We get on an argument and we'll say the same thing for 50 years. The world has changed and we're still talking about the stuff that we do have control over, what we can expose our children to.
But wouldn't you have to also say on the other side, though, so you have a school system that's not teaching music theory at all, right? And you have...
Not Kip West does.
But
they have an excellent music department run by a Black woman.
At the same,
she's setting kids all over the world.
Yeah, so we have examples, right? But overall, I mean, when I was in school, we had to take instruments. I tried to play the clarinet until my mom said, "Hey, take that joint back, boy." Oh no, because you don't know what you're doing, and you get on my nerves. So she made me take the clarinet back, and I was playing the bells, you know. But
shout out to all the parents that had to endure a recorder.
We took instruments home, right? So the way they're teaching, and I have a theory. I'm wondering, as an insider, your thoughts about it. You can't exploit an educated consumer. So if we're going to create, and no offense to you all about, you know, I think that there's a cost to the democratization of music, that everybody can go up into their room and in their backyard and make some beats and make a song now, right? So, and I think the artificialness of music is problematic. It creates a lot and it's out there to be consumed, but some of this stuff is trash, and it was created with a trash process.
Okay, I have to push back. I have to push back at that. The thing about the hip hop producing, I just cut a sample today of Joe Samples of the Crusaders, "Free as the Wind."
Right.
That boy is bad.
I believe you, but I'm not saying, I didn't say hip hop. I'm saying in general, the way, I think that there is a chasm where we have an influx of a lot of quote unquote music that anybody can wake up and I got a beat and they throw something together with all of the technology, and it's there as a musical product to be consumed. And consumers who don't really know what music is anymore, because we're not taught it. You talked about the discerning ear you have when you listen to something, because you're a professional. Most of us, we don't know harmony from melody, from rhythm, from beat.
But you do. Every song that was sung, you really do know more music than you think you know. Because if you have preset your radio to what you want to hear, if you have curated a Spotify playlist, you know melody, harmony, lyrics, beats, and everything.
You know the ones you prefer.
Well, you just haven't been taught to language about it. You do know it.
Yeah.
It's a thing. You know, there's the critique of the artificial music. Do you know that they used to say the same thing about doo-woppers in the 1950s on the corner? Why y'all sitting around just trying to harmonize? You should be doing something else. And now we're looking back at it as, oh, this was the golden age of harmony.
Take 6. That's, you know, it's the greatest thing ever.
It's a, like as you said, Tiffany, it's a cycle that keeps repeating itself, and you really do have to read these histories to understand that you will catch yourself. It's like, this is what they said about Thomas Dorsey's gospel music. This is why they kicked Mahalia Jackson out the church, because they said she was singing blues and not gospel. It just goes on and on and on and on, and we keep doing saying the same thing, and it's not going to serve who we think we're trying to serve.
So in that, speaking from a music education space, we already know we are underserved in music education in public schools. We're underserved in music education, period. A lot of our young people don't have some basic things that maybe older ones of us had because it came with school. You said you played the clarinet. Some students have never touched an instrument, so they don't even have that foundation. But Dr. Ramsey, you said something that's very, very important. We know more than we think we know. We understand the beat. We understand the rhythm. We understand how it makes us feel. There's certain young, like, again, I'm not trying to bash younger music, but there's some music that's on the radio now that just feels like dark, death, and Armageddon. Before I hear a lyric, the tones, the rhythm, it speaks to a darker place in me. So I understand what you're saying, Brother Shamari. I understand what you're all saying. I think the key here is, have we all taken the time to just stop and say, what am I listening to? How does it make me feel?
It's not the music. You want to change the music? Change the world. Change the context in which the music is being made.
And
if you,
yes,
you know what? If kids are that dark, I want to hear it. Why? Because I know what's on your mind. I want to hear how dark it is. Why do I want to hear how dark it is? Maybe I can change it. I'm not going to change. If I change the context in which you have to live every day, if I change the fact that you don't feel like you're going to get shot trying to get to an 8th grade rehearsal, where else are they supposed to put it if they don't put it into music? Where else they're doing the same thing that we've always done. We would not even have the spirituals.
Right.
If we just, This is what they told us. We talked about shutting down the drums. We can't do that and get results. You got to give them alternatives, an alternative world, an alternative system, and the music will change.
And I fundamentally agree with that. Where I think that we're throwing the word and I could be wrong. I don't think we understand music and its power and its impact. So we're saying we understand. We don't. That's the fundamental issue. We don't understand the science of it. We don't understand the spirit of it and the power of it. And so because we don't understand it, we're a little indifferent about ingesting and consuming it. And I think that's the products that we're seeing. I think we need to teach what music is, can be, and can do to you emotionally, spiritually, psychically.
Yeah.
We got to teach that to young people and old people and everybody, because then you can discern. If you don't understand, you can't discern. And that's where we're losing.
All right. Real quick, because believe it or not, we're getting to the end of the panel. I just want to read this quote. And I had a question text to me from a friend in the audience. There's a quote from, I believe it's Confucius, that said, "If one should desire to know whether a kingdom is well governed, if its morals are good or bad, the quality of its music will furnish the answer."
Well, then we're in trouble.
Oh, I disagree. This is the most exciting time to be a musician, to listen to black music right now. There are so many dedicated artists out there rehearsing and doing their thing and becoming technically excellent and writing lyrics that they're studying the history of our poets, and they are creating this music. I don't know where y'all been, but just... This is a great musical moment right now. I could go down the list. Let's check out my Spotify list. It's too much great music out there I can't even get to.
I love this. So we're going to move quickly to this question, just have a couple of answers, and then we're going to close the panel. The question is for anyone on the panel. What do you think about the role of capitalism in what about the role of capitalism in what is framed as black music in mainstream? Let's try to do the snippet.
I mean, the snippet is that right now, I think the conversation we're having, to Dr. Guy Ramsey's point, is about the capitalistic music that we're consuming. And that might be this big, and there's a world of creativeness that we don't get to experience unless you're looking for it. And you have to have the intention to find that world, and that world is out there. But what we're mostly talking about in these conversations is the the colonizer prescribed musical form. It's almost like food that we eat, right? Like, we're not getting real food. We're getting processed food just like we're getting processed music.
All right. I think that's a good place to close. Before we wrap it up completely, yes, can we give it a round of applause, please, for the panel? I hope this is filling your soul, for real, for real. Really quick, can we just run down the line? Please share your social media handles. For those of you on the air, real quick, let people know how they can hear you. And if you have music coming out, please let us know how. Real quick, 20 seconds or less.
The Source, 5 a.m. to 7 a.m., Monday through Friday. My Instagram is ISLDDVA, Island Diva for short. And on Facebook, I am Andrea Lawful-Sanders. You'll find me there.
All right.
I'm on IG, Ramsey Music, and I'd like to invite you all to First Fridays in Germantown. We have a program called Little Itty Bitty Jazz John. It's a free concert for children every first Fridays at our Culture House on the corner of Johnson and Germantown Avenue. The other thing I'd like to invite you to is, we'll just leave it right there. Little Itty Bitty Jazz John.
Yes, I love it. Thank you. Lloyd.
Music to uplift your spirits and bring joyfulness to your heart. Every Saturday night at 7, from 7 till 10 on WURD Remember now, Bob Marley said, don't worry about a thing. He's dead and gone. But he inspires you when he comes on your television and he says, don't worry about a thing. Every little thing is going to be all right.
I know that's right. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It truly has been a pleasure sitting here today on this distinguished panel. I'm so nice they had to put me on twice on Sundays. I'm on Sundays from 12 noon until 2 p.m., and then we come back again from 5 until 6 p.m. with our Afro Unity piece, myself and Brother Samari and Patrick and Jadu. While I'm giving out shout-outs, I want to shout out my co-host, Sister Malele, and Mama Maisha sitting there in the back. That's right, that's right. We always put on for our city. And you can always reach me at photoman4you2@yahoo.com.
Thank you, David.
I'm going to do this a little different. If anybody from Urban Shamans is still here, shout out the Vibe, please. Shout out the Vibe. And then also, I want to shout out the Spirit of the Drum, which we do. I think our next one is the 16th at North Philly Peace Park. We rove around the parks and we try to bring that positive vibration through the drum to different spots. And then in Ngoma, tribute to the drum, Mama Maisha, Sister Malele, can y'all shout out June 30th to let people know how they can get some more of that positive spirit?
Yeah.
All right.
Park, Winthrop Avenue.
All right, please give it up for our panel, please. Yes.